Well, everyone, we've got a date. We've finally got a date. And June 12th is when we will finally be getting a look at what's been cooking up over at Xbox and Bethesda ever since last year. Of course, we're all hyped, and in today's video, I just want to give some of my early predictions about what I think we might be seeing at this event. So let's get started. So first, I want to keep it relatively short and sweet with Bethesda, because everyone knows at this point that it's probably pretty safe to expect a Todd Howard Starfield demo. Last year we got our first in-engine look at Starfield, but this year should be quite a step up with an actual gameplay demo. Now, I'd imagine that this show probably opens up with Starfield just like they did last year, you know? Let Todd Howard come out and give a nice speech and then pull a controller right out of his back jean pocket and hit us with that main menu music for Starfield. I think that'd be a great way to get the audience buzzing and kind of set the stage for the rest of the show. But of course, there's one other major thing that Bethesda announced at last year's showcase, and that is, of course, Redfall. Now, this is where it gets a bit interesting, because you would certainly expect that we'd see this at the show this year, but it's pretty hard to say considering we've also heard rumors swirling on Twitter and gaming news sites that the game has been delayed into 2023 from its original summer 2022 launch date, I should say. Now hear me out, I think the perfect launch date for this game, if possible of course, is October 31st. I say it launches on the day of Halloween. It seems like it'd be the perfect game for a Halloween launch. Now of course, I highly doubt they do this for a few reasons, but the main reason being that I don't think they want two big games back to back. That being said, we saw Microsoft do exactly the same thing last year with Forza Horizon 5 and Halo Infinite's multiplayer releasing right next to each other. So I suppose anything is possible when it comes to Redfall, but I'm going out on a limb and saying that I do expect it to be shown at this showcase. And honestly, that's all I'll confidently say I'm expecting from Bethesda this year, although I think it's worth mentioning that a few notable people in the community have recently been retweeting the original announcement trailer for Indiana Jones by Machine Games. I think it's definitely interesting and something to keep an eye on, but I don't think this game will be here unless it's much further along than we all expect, which, you know, could very well be the case. And now we make our way to Xbox Game Studios, and just like a lot of you, I'm expecting to see a lot from these studios, but I want to start with what I'm definitely not expecting to see. And that's probably going to be the most obvious thing. I don't expect to see Perfect Dark. I mean, we've all heard what's going on with that studio. It certainly sounds like Perfect Dark is now just a Daryl Gallagher plus Crystal Dynamics game that is being co-developed by a small initiative team, as opposed to being an initiative game co-developed by Crystal Dynamics. I honestly don't think we'll be playing this game until 2025. And then the final game that I definitely think we aren't going to see is Everwild. I mean, we've all heard what's been going on with that studio as well. I mean, it's been soft rebooted, hard rebooted, like multiple times during its development. I think they're probably back at the drawing board for this one. But with that bit of negativity out of the way, I think we can now focus on the positives from here on out for Xbox Game Studios. And I'm going to start with the game that I am most excited for, and that's Avowed. Of course, we don't know a whole lot about Avowed outside of its initial reveal trailer. We know it's an Obsidian-made first-person fantasy RPG set in the Pillars of Eternity universe, and by all accounts, it's expected to be a step up in size from 2019's The Outer Worlds. And it's talked about by a lot of people in the community as being Obsidian's very own Skyrim. And you guys know me, RPGs are my favorite genre, and Skyrim is my favorite RPG. So anything that gets compared in any way to Skyrim gets my attention. Not to mention the fact that Obsidian is coming off of one of my favorite RPGs in the last decade with The Outer Worlds. There's a lot of games coming from Xbox Game Studios, but Avowed is at the top of my list for my most anticipated, so I've got my fingers crossed that we get a look at what the world has to offer. And up next, I think it's probably a safe bet that we'll be seeing Forza Motorsport. And in fact, I think that's probably the safest bet to make outside of Starfield. And I think this will be a very important game for Turn 10. They have a chance to capitalize after a rocky start and a bit of controversy for their main competitor, Gran Turismo 7. And they've already got a distinct advantage in that it's only set to be released on next-gen hardware. So we're looking at a game that has been built entirely from the ground up to squeeze all of the power possible out of the next-gen Xbox consoles as well as today's best PCs. I'm also interested to see what Turn 10 does with a fresh reboot of the Motorsport series. Of course, I'll be expecting the same tight driving mechanics that we've gotten used to from Motorsport over the years, but what's really got me excited is new vehicles, new visuals, new tracks, and of course, some old favorite tracks and some old favorite vehicles. I mean, we've all speculated that this game will be handled much in the same way that Forza Horizon 5 was, in that we didn't see it until showtime, and then it came out only a few months later in the fall. I've got my fingers crossed that this will be the case with Motorsport, but regardless of whether or not it releases this year, I still fully expect to see this game at the show. And up next, I want to talk just a little bit about inXile Entertainment. I truly think that this is Xbox's most interesting studio in regards to rumors we hear about what they're working on. As we all know, it's been confirmed that they're hard at work on a new FPS RPG, but we've also heard talks of some classic Bethesda remasters, maybe Elder Scrolls or perhaps even Fallout. Now personally, I typically would give no attention to just rumors, but inXile has had some interesting tweets come out from their Twitter over the past week or so. One of the tweets I don't have a screenshot of, unfortunately, but it came the day after this tweet I'm going to show you right here. And as you can see, it says, "Who doesn't love a post-apocalyptic Vegas?" And at first glance, it's just a tweet showing some nice original art for Wasteland. But the very next day, inXile also tweeted, quote, "At least no one overreacted." Now, this is a tweet that I don't have a screenshot of, unfortunately, but I've got something else that I can show you, and that's an inXile tweet from yesterday with a nice big smiley face emoji. And of course, this by itself means nothing. But it's interesting that it came the day after someone on Twitter, who I will not name because apparently he got in trouble for saying what he said, had mentioned that there were Fallout and Elder Scrolls remasters in the works over at inXile. Now, does that mean that it's true? No. Does it mean that we'll see any of these at the show? Absolutely not. But it's interesting nonetheless, and regardless, I fully expect to see inXile there in some capacity, most likely to announce their steampunk FPS RPG, and you better believe I'm excited as hell to check it out. And just to add a quick note about another Xbox studio that I definitely think will be there, I just really don't know in, what capacity, but I assume we'll also be seeing something from 343, maybe a preview of Forge or maybe a trailer for an event during Season 2, who knows, but honestly, it's not an Xbox show if 343 isn't there in some form. And then I want to talk a little bit about Xbox Game Studios publishing. As we all know, last year we got a little tease of a game called Contraband from Avalanche Studios. I'm definitely expecting to see this at the show, and maybe it'll even be gameplay. I'm still not 100% sold on the game, but it does sound like it has the potential to be very interesting, considering the fact that it's a multiplayer heist game with a focus on vehicular combat. Avalanche always does great vehicular combat with their games like Mad Max and Rage 2, but this likely won't be the only game we see from XGS Publishing. We'll probably see plenty more games ranging all the way from smaller indie studios to big AAA studios. In fact, it was already leaked earlier this year by Jez Corden of Windows Central that IO Interactive is working with Microsoft on a fantasy RPG that has something to do with dragons and features a vast multiplayer experience. And then you've got Brass Lion Entertainment confirmed to be working on an action RPG with focus on the Wu-Tang Clan. I don't really know what that entails, but it sounds fucking insane. And then we'll probably be getting another look at As Dusk Falls, and then finally we've got the whole rumor of a Kojima and Xbox collab to bring us a brand new game from the absolutely unique mind of the legendary game director. Now personally, I'm not convinced that the Kojima rumor is true at this point, but everything else is 110% confirmed, so we'll have plenty to see from XGS Publishing at this show. Then of course we'll have our third-party showings from things like Replaced all the way to A Plague's Tale 2. Both of those games I'm extremely excited for, by the way, but that's besides the point. I'm sure we'll have plenty of third-party games and announcements to talk about when the show is over. But finally, I wanted to pick a few dark horses who I think might show up, but I'm not 100% sure. And first up on that list is Playground Games with their reboot of Fable. This is a game that I am incredibly hyped for, but I remember last year getting excited to maybe see some info on it, and then ended up being let down. So I'm gonna temper my expectations here, but I'm comfortable picking this as a dark horse for the show. In fact, I think it'd be one hell of a closer for the show, just like they did in 2020. And up next, I'm going with Undead Labs. I think we might see something from State of Decay 3. Now, do I think it'll be releasing anytime soon? No, definitely not. But they could give us a taste of what they're working on. I also think we could get a look at whatever it is Compulsion has cooking up at their studio. We heard some rumors around this time last year, or at least I think it was around this time last year, that they were hard at work on a third-person fantasy game with a Deep South setting with a heavy emphasis on storytelling, which sounds completely bonkers to me, quite honestly. And speaking of dark horses, I've said it multiple times, but I really do think Compulsion has an opportunity to be Xbox's dark horse studio. I think that team is neck and neck with Double Fine in terms of their creativity. I think that some of their games didn't hit the way they wanted to due to obviously budget and then likely also a bit of overambition. But now that they've got that nice big Microsoft budget, I think they've got the talent and creativity to make something that is totally unique to them and them alone. And then my final pick for my dark horse showing at this event is The Coalition. We all have no idea what they're working on, other than that it's something outside of the Gears universe. And that's interesting to me, and I'm sure it's a relief for them. I mean, as much as I'm sure they love Gears of War, it's gotta be draining only working on one thing. So whatever it is, I'm hoping it lets them stretch and hit the refresh button so that when they go back to the drawing board for Gears 6, they're feeling good and revitalized to bring the new trilogy to a close. But that's all I've got for today's video. I didn't really expect it to be this long, but I kinda just started talking and taking notes and time just started to fly by, I guess. But I'm interested to hear what you folks think. What are you expecting from this year's Xbox and Bethesda showcase? Leave a comment below and let me know what you're thinking. Leave a like if you liked the video, and please remember to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell if you're enjoying the content and want to stay up to date on all my latest videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.